Hi everyone, welcome back. And in this video, we're going to be learning about CSS to the transform. CSS to the transforms allows us to move, scale, rotate, and skew elements. And we are also going to learn about the CSS transform property and the possible methods for the transform property. And they are translate, scale, scale X, scale Y, rotate, rotate X, rotate Y, skew, skew X, skew Y, and matrix. So let's see how it's done. I'll have a div right here, and I'll give it a class transform. And this class transform, I'll give it a width and height. So I'll give it a width of 150px and height of 150px as well. Also, I'll give it a background color, say orange. Okay. All right, so once I open this up in browser, we're just going to see a div with a width of 150, height of 150px, and a background color of orange. So let's set up the transform. Say we only want the transform to take effect when we hover on the box. So we're going to say transform hover, and the first method for the transform property is translate. So say transform. And what translate does is translate allows us to move an object from its current position, either from the right, from the left, from the top, or from the bottom. So in this case, we're using translate. Say we want to move it 50 pixels from the right and say 100 pixels from the top. Now, we are just going to check it in browser and see what it looks like. So it's not really visible. Well, it is visible, of course, but let's just add something to make it more interesting. So let's add transition of 2 seconds. We want that to happen within 2 seconds so we can see what's happening. So you can see it went 100 pixels from the top and then 50 pixels from the right. Now, we could also use a negative value. If we're using a negative value here, oh, I forgot to mention that this represents X and Y. The 50 represents X and Y. So if we are moving in the X direction, we are either moving to the right or to the left. And if we're using Y direction, we are moving either to the top or to the bottom. Now in this case, I'm using just 50px. So this automatically means that I'm moving to the right. But if I add a negative value here, that makes it move to the left. Same thing applies to this 100px. If I added a negative sign, it means it will move down instead of moving to the top. So let's just see this. I use minus 50px and I have to move to the left. I believe we can see what just happened. They move 50 pixels to the left. Another way of doing translate is if you want just a single, you want it to move in a single manner, you could just write translate X. So you know that whatever you are putting within those brackets is a single value. So you're moving in the X direction up or down. So if you're using a negative value, you should know you're moving to the left. But if you're using a positive value, you're moving to the right. Same thing applies. You could also have translate Y. So if you're using translate Y, you know that you're moving either up or down. But if you are using a negative value, then it means you're going down. You're going to the bottom. You're moving towards. So if you are using a negative value, then that means you're moving an object to the bottom. All right. So that is it for translate. I'll just return this to how it was, 100px, and I'll link this at a positive value. All right, then let's talk about the next object, which is scale. All right, so the scale method, unlike translate, is used to increase or decrease the size of the object. So we have saying we don't want to use scale anymore. We don't want to use translate. We want to use scale. So we say we have scale 3 and 2. So this basically means that this object would be 3 times bigger than its original width, and it will be 2 times bigger than its original height. So the 3 represents the width and 2 represents height. So it basically represents x and y as well. Say 3 is for x and 2 is for y. So let's see what it looks like if we check on our browser. So we can see that it increases the width and also the height of the object. Now we could also use x or y as well. So if we're using x, we are only increasing the width of the object. But if you are using scale y, we are increasing or reducing the height of the object. Now the same way we could say scale, say 0.2, 0.2. So we are just reducing the width and the height of the objects once we hover on it. You can see what it looks like. So that is 0.2, 0.2. We can either increase or reduce it. To get the difference, translate is simply to move the object from its current position. But scale is to increase or decrease. And the same way we can have it like this if you just want to write it directly, or you could use scale X. So once you are using just scale X, you should know that you are only working on the width of that object, not the height, just the width. So in this case, you can see that we reduce the width of the object. And then if we are using Y, we are reducing the height of the object. So you can see that is what scale does. Scale is simply to increase or decrease the size of your object. Then moving to the next one, we're going to talk about rotate. All right, so let's talk about the skew method. The skew method allows us to skew an element. It's more like make it slant. It's not parallel and doesn't have a right angle direction. It's just skew, slant. So let's see what it looks like. So I'm just going to remove this and choose skew. So the same thing applies for the same direction. We could skew on the x-axis, we could skew on the y-axis, but the value we are going to use is slightly different from translate and scale. For translate, we add just a normal value, like a whole number, 100px. We could use percentage as well. And then for scale, we had a whole number, and we also had a decimal number, maybe 0.2, 0.5. But for skew, we are going to be writing our values in degree. So I could say 30 degree. So my object is going to skew along the x-axis, 30 degrees, and along the x-axis, like this. So we can see that it is just affecting the x-axis. Now you could include, maybe you want something else for your y-axis, saying 0 or another, maybe you just want a different direction. And we also have skew x and skew y. It's the same thing. So if I use skew x, I can just use skew x like this, and it's going to give me 30 degrees for the x. Or the one I did just now, if we're writing it like this, then we might have to put maybe another value, maybe 0. Or this also means that for x and y, we are having 30 degrees on the x and y axis, and we could use skew y for the y axis, we could use skew x for the x axis, or we just use skew and then put the value, and it's going to skew the object on both axes. Then the last, okay, not the last one, we're still going to talk about the matrix method. So let's talk about rotate. Rotate is used to rotate an object. So I'll just change this to rotate, and our object is going to rotate based on the degree. So if we put this at 30, what it looks like on the browser. So we can see that it's just rotate 30 degree. Now we could also do rotate x. So it's going to rotate just on the x-axis. And we could do y as well. It's going to rotate on the y-axis. Or we could use a different value for both direction, maybe x and y direction. So this could be 90 degrees, could be 180, could be 360, depending on how you want your object to rotate. So the very last one is the matrix method. The matrix method takes in 6 values, and the first value is skew x. The second value is skew y. The third value is skew x. The fourth value is skew y. The third is translate x and translate y. Say we have A, B, C, D, and C, X, C, Y. So A represents skew x. B represents skew y. And C represents skew x, and D represents skew y, and CX represents translate x, translate on the x-axis, and C represents translate on the y-axis, translate y. All right, so since we know the inputs, the values for the method, I'll just, okay, now, I mentioned earlier that this matrix, it is used to apply everything, all the transform methods, all at once, but rotate is not here. Now, the reason is that we could actually make an object rotate through one of this method, either scale or skew. I can rotate an object. I can make an object rotate by using the skew method, depend on the value I give it in degree. So that is why rotate is not represented by a value here, but it is included. So let's quickly add our values. Say we want 1, 0, 0, 1, and then for translate X, it wants to translate 50, and for Y, say 40. So let's see what it looks like on our browser. So we can see what happens. Now in this case, skill, skew, and the rest of the guys are kind of off. You can see that it is only translate X and Y that's working in this case. So if you want to include your skill, you want to include your skew, that is not really hard to do. You could, since you know the how to represent the values in the brackets. All right, so this is all about 2D CSS 2D transform. We have translate, which is to move. We have scale, which is to either increase or decrease your objects or your elements. And we have skew, which is to skew the elements to make it slant or stretch the edges. We have rotate, which is to rotate. CSS 3D transform. Please do well to subscribe to our channel and let me see how yours turns out in the comment section. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.